What's up, everyone? This is Connor, aka Carstairs Cowboy, and I'm coming to you today with a review of The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, as well as some Call of Duty Black Ops 2 Team Deathmatch gameplay on Express, where I go 22 and 3 if memory serves me correctly. Now, in my last video, I'd said that I was hoping to get the chance to see The Hobbit sometime soon, and fortunately I did get that opportunity, and I was very pleasantly surprised by a lot of that movie. Now, on the other hand, I also said that I was going to try and compare The Hobbit to Skyfall to see which one was better, but after watching The Hobbit I realized that there aren't very many common points to draw on, and comparing them is pretty much impossible, so I'm going to take a cop-out and say that in their own genres they were both equally good. Now onto The Hobbit itself, though. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey was the first of 3 films directed by Peter Jackson, as well as written by him, that stem from the novel The Hobbit, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey covers roughly the first third of the book, and details how Gandalf the Grey recruits Bilbo Baggins into the company of 13 dwarves, led by Thorin Oakenshield, to be their burglar, as well as how they traveled through the Misty Mountains, were captured by goblins, and how Bilbo finds the One Ring and is introduced to Gollum. Now we also see a new character, Radagast the Brown, and are introduced to the shady figure of the Necromancer, who may or may not be raising ringwraiths from the dead. Compared to the original trilogy, I gotta say The Hobbit was a surprisingly pleasant change, and I liked that movie a lot better. The characters, I felt, were more likable, and were more dynamic than they ever were in Lord of the Rings trilogy. With my biggest fear, whiny hobbits, not being realized in this film. I have to say, out of all the hobbits, the only one I've liked so far is Bilbo, because I just could not tolerate Sam, Frodo, Merry, and Pippin. But the other pleasant surprise that I really found was that the orcs and the goblins in this film were proper villains, as opposed to whatever they were in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They seem to be more like street thugs than menacing, villainous creatures. So I think that was very well done. Another thing that I found that really struck me in The Hobbit was that more seemed to happen throughout the film than throughout the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. The action was a little bit faster paced. There were fewer dead zones in the film where people were just talking or they had running montages. So you weren't sitting there waiting for a 10-minute running sequence to end, which was always a bonus. And like I said, I personally felt that it seemed like more happened in the entire Hobbit film than happened in the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, which spanned one book each. The other thing that surprised me very pleasantly was how some of the characters stepped their game up completely. Bilbo was a likable, heroic figure in this film, but also Gandalf, who, let's be honest, in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he was hardly there. Didn't do much by way of magic. He fought a Balrog, but that was about it. Whereas in The Hobbit, he was much more involved, acting as more of a leader figure, and I feel had more of a presence than he did in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The other thing that really impressed me was how they redesigned some of the characters in this film. The orcs and the goblins in The Hobbit were almost completely different, and in a pleasant way, from their Lord of the Rings trilogy counterparts. In the Lord of the Rings trilogy, they were, like I said earlier, they seemed to be a little more thuggish, but really weren't all that menacing. Whereas in The Hobbit, they are much wilder, they're more barbaric, they're more menacing, and they just seem more villainous overall. The goblins themselves got the most drastic redesign, whereas in the first movie of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we see goblins as being sort of smaller, paler, wider-eyed orcs. In The Hobbit, they're ugly, they're squat, they're deformed, they're riddled with diseases and pustules, and they're just disgusting and ugly, and you wouldn't want to meet them in a dark alley, and I think that's exactly how goblins should be. Also, as the the leader figure villains go, they were much better. They didn't have the nasty bronchitis-laden speech impediments of the orcs from the first film, with the Great Goblin in fact being very well spoken, much better so than many of the people I know in real life. So I gotta say, Mr. Jackson, props to you there. They also didn't create any sort of last-minute hack-together side stories to add drama that I found just killed the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like the little Eowyn love triangle thing with Aragorn. You know, that didn't need to be there. No one needed to see that, and I think it was just there to add space to the film. But there wasn't anything like this in The Hobbit, so again, props to them there. As for the acting and the characters, I gotta say it was absolutely top-notch. Each actor brought their own sort of unique feel to their character, and when you've got 15, 16 odd characters to distinguish between, especially when in a lot of ways they do look similar, it's the mark of a really good actor when they can make each character seem unique. So again, very well done there. The character interactions were also a lot better, a lot more dynamic. They were a little bit funnier, they were full of their own quirks, and they just seemed to be more like how real people would interact, as compared to the relatively static and flat characters that were in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They never really seemed to change. They never really seemed to have any emotions. I mean, aside from Legolas and Gimli's weird little bromance thing going on, there was hardly anything, I feel, by way of proper character interactions, and it really did feel like they were just reading a set of lines. But overall, I would say The Hobbit was definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen, was certainly better than the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and would be well worth going to see in theaters. When it comes out on Blu-ray, I'm definitely going to buy it, and I'd say it was an excellent, excellent film. Anyway, that's wrapping this video up, so I'll see you later. Next time I'll be bringing a full review, and thanks for watching.